Hello and welcome to Blogosphere Serious Influence, the podcast all about the business side of the influencer industry. I'm Alice Audley and I'm the founder of Blogosphere, which hopefully you've heard of. But if not, Blogosphere is a media company rooted in the world of influencers. We run events, an influencer network, and publish a nationally distributed print magazine. And now a podcast too, which I'll be presenting. If there are any questions about the influencer industry that you want answered, be sure to tweet us your suggestions. Our Twitter handle is @BlogosphereM. And if you want to learn more about influencers and the influencer industry, be sure to visit blogosferemagazine.com and invest in a subscription to our Essential magazine. We're excited to announce that Series 1 of Serious Influence has an exclusive sponsor, the smart thinking money app, Yolt. Yolt is an app that I personally use, so I'm delighted to partner with them. You can sync your accounts, credit cards and pensions in one view and track your spending habits, how much you're spending and what you're spending it on. I buy a lot of coffee. Yolt takes the stress out of budgeting and gives you the tools to achieve your financial life goals. For me, that's a trip to French Polynesia. Download Yolt for free from the App Store or Google Play Store today. Today on Blogosphere Serious Influence, I'm joined by Jo Burford, who is community lead at Niche, a creator platform which is part of Twitter. Jo is responsible for pitching and selecting influencers for the platform's brand campaigns. It's a position that she's well set up for, having worked in this space for more than 10 years. Jo first stumbled into the influencer world back in 2005, when she worked with luxury bloggers on events.
I started working for a very small agency called Adorium, quite big now, and they specialise with influencers in the luxury space.
So what years are we in now?
We are in the way back when years of 2005.
2005. So are they even called, is it even influence now?
No, do you know what it was called back then? It was called CRM management. Client relationship management, and our clients were people who spent a lot of money on watches and fast cars, and at that time we hadn't had the crash. So the crash came in 2008, so at that time everybody had 3 or 4 credit cards. Everyone was living way beyond their means. I was riding that train with them and living what was actually at the time a really interesting time of year to be like living in London. Everybody was overspending. People had no problem of talking about how much they're overspending. Friends were putting houses on credit cards, which is, bonkers to us now. But back then, people were literally doing this. And those that won, some of my friends in that case, had 0% finance on houses, bought with credit cards with £1,000 down payment. And they're now sitting on beautiful houses. But those that kind of lost out on it just racked up lots of debt. So Adorium was in that really interesting intersection of people who wanted to live a sort of fast lifestyle and those that had the way of working with people like that Audi, Fairline, Rolex. So I started working at the really top end stuff. It was super fun, lots of events, and that was where I first got my taste of working with brands and people, because I'd always worked with brands and clients in a very normal traditional marketing space. This was the first time that we put people with brands at boat shows, at parties, and this was way before Instagram. So we didn't really have anywhere to put the content. The content lived in newsletters. So that's how old I am.
But did you discover bloggers at that time? Was bloggers the first form that you met? Yeah.
Completely. And blogger outreach was really where I kind of began. So it was working with some of the, I think it was what Katie wore and some of the initial bloggers that were out there that still now are on Instagram. But it was just literally WordPress and Tumblr sites were the way that we would find people, invite them down to parties and do what people do now and put product in their hands. I didn't really know what I was doing back then.
Who first kind of introduced you to the world of bloggers? Was it because you were reading so much and then you started looking for content online where you were responsible for saying we should get in on inviting these people to our parties? Absolutely,
that's exactly how it happened. The guys that started Adorium were hedge fund managers, so they really had no idea about marketing. They just knew a lot of rich people. So they started from that point. I came along and I was like, right, okay, how are we going to connect these brands with these people? Let's look at what's happening. And for me, I was always online. I was, out there with MySpace at the time, for all of those people old enough to know what MySpace was. And people were just starting out these days. And it was really exciting. I loved reading all these bloggers. They were this new breed of cool people. Obviously, you had the, what we'd call OG now, Susie Bubble, and people like that are so widely recognised as cultural celebrities. Back then, they were very much on the kind of outside spaces of cool. And that's where I was younger. That's where I wanted to be. So that's where I found them, places where I was reading, similar to now. It's what we read, isn't it? It's what we like. It's what we do. Probably all of us that, into this kind of thing don't recognise ourselves within mainstream media, and that's where we went to digital. So really similarly back then, that's what we did.
How did your bosses react when you were pitching these bloggers to them at that time?
I actually loved it. Yeah, they were really into it. They were very supportive. As I said, they were hedge fund managers, so they were really doing quite a lot of business in other areas, and this was a bit of a plaything for them. Since then, Adorium's done really well. I think it had outside investment, and it's now become an actual high-end marketing platform for high net worth people. So I wasn't particularly interested in luxury. Luxury's never really been my thing. If you take a look at me, you'd know that straight away. But it was fun for a while. And after that, I actually started working more in the arts space, which is probably something I'm more passionate about.
What was your role at the beginning then at Twitter?
It's evolved quite a lot, as Twitter always does. It's a very fast-paced moving platform and company to work for. So when I first joined, it was quite clear what they wanted to do. They wanted to launch niche in the UK and EMEA, so that was Europe and Africa and the Middle East. And so they wanted somebody who could galvanise a bunch of different creators from different platforms and different passions and pull them all together into one dashboard. So how we work is that niche is an internal dashboard, and it's how we select creators for our campaigns. So it's not external, it's not a marketplace. You don't upload a photograph and kind of pitch for work. It's simply an internal dashboard that I monitor. And then I use that dashboard to help me select talent for different campaigns and also to work across Twitter. So let's say the content partnerships team in media are looking to send some people to the summertime ball. They'll come to me and I'll bring up the dashboard and we'll look at a few profiles, check their engagement, see where they're located, make sure that we've got a diverse mix. I'll propose these people. I guess I kind of go into battle for them. One of the best bits about my job is presenting new people that people haven't seen before. Everyone wants to have a name they've seen before on a talent list, and I'm the person that tries to say, I know you want that, but what you really want is this person.
So how does Niche work? Is it an opt-in sign-up platform?
It is, yeah. You go to niche.co and you select the channels you want to monetize. So let's say that you are a fashion Instagrammer, you connect Instagram, but you also want to monetize Twitter, or potentially if you're a YouTuber, you'll connect YouTube, and then an automatic site is created. On that profile, we don't see any of your passwords, we don't see any of the information from the back end of your profile. We're simply scraping information from your API. A little like how people now connect to their gym. I get all my gym information through my Facebook API, and I always buy all my clothes through Facebook now. So it kind of works like that. It's really quick, and also it gives me all the information I kind of need to make a decision. But the thing to note is that I don't just look at the numbers. The good thing about the niche is that it brings it all together into a platform, but actually I'll go much deeper into each channel. I'll see what they're saying on Twitter. I'll look at their content on Instagram. If they do have YouTube, I'll be looking at the quality of their production.
So in terms of that, it is quite manual due diligence.
Yeah, it really is. I think a lot of people think now that everything is technology overload. We have to automate everything. It's all got to be scalable. When actually, I think some of the best things come out of a slower, more considered approach, especially when you are looking at placing somebody with a brand. And particularly when potentially that person may not be managed, or they may just be starting out. You need to sort of look after them in a way and think, they're doing really great things here with photography, but potentially are they going to be the right person for this brand? There's a lot of things to talk to them about. So just going in with numbers, you can shoot here, do this for this much. I think that transactional relationship, it isn't something that I would want to be a part of, and I don't think creators would either.
So how does a campaign work from start to finish? A brand has X budget and then you pick a creator. How does that work?
Yeah, and it's quite simple really for us. We're very fortunate that we're owned by Twitter. So a lot of the inbound inquiries come from established Twitter clients. So Twitter's been operating in sales now for almost 10 years. So the clients that they have, the classic consumer tech, Samsung through to BMW, everyone you can kind of imagine is already advertising on Twitter. So the great thing for us is that we simply have those relationships already with the client. So a lot of the things that come in are us approaching the client partners within Twitter sales and saying, hey, we've seen what they've done here. We think they'd be really great for a more creator-led campaign. Or also it comes in more traditionally like an agency through a brief, and then we look at it. The sales team will assess how much budget there is. And then for us, it's my job to select the right talent for the campaign.
And so the brand has the budget, then it goes to the sales team. Did the sales team then take a cut of that budget and then it goes to niche and then you take a cut of the budget, or you monetize it Don't you monetize it on Twitter itself?
Yeah, we're very lucky again. I mean, and that's another reason I feel that we've really stayed the distance. Niche was acquired by Twitter in 2015, and I think we've seen a lot of different kind of dashboards and partners come and go since then, and we've really stayed the distance because we make our money through promoted tweets. So kind of a little bit like a TV revenue way. The brand is spending money on Twitter as if they were spending money on TV back in the day, and then we make our money from the promotion on that. So we don't make money from creators. So when we talk to talent managers or creators, we're super transparent about our budget because we know exactly how much we can spend on talent.
So say Samsung have their budget, then it goes to you. You select the influencers. You have the budget from the media spend that Samsung are already spending on Twitter.
Mm-hmm. Out of that, we will pitch for how much we need for talent. So we'll say, hey, you've got £100,000 to spend promoting this activity. We need an equivalent of £50,000 for the talent, and that's extra money on top. But we make our money from the promoted spend. We can always have very upfront conversations with managers and talent because we know exactly what we've asked for and how much we've got to spend. So if we try to pitch for any more, let's say we find that talent is extremely expensive and, we haven't got the cash, we will return. But actually we do that. That rarely happens now, actually, because there's so much great creators out there. There's so much great talent. We're rarely in a situation where we're backed against the wall and we need to pay more for somebody. To be quite honest with you, we never book campaigns on people. So whereas most traditional talent agencies will look at their roster and they'll commit certain people, we don't commit people, we commit types of characters. So we'll do profiles. And then that gives us a lot more leeway that if somebody is potentially very busy or they're really pricey for whatever reason because they're completely stacked and they need to make some extra cash, whatever their personal reasons are on their finances going up or down like it does in this industry, we are not beholden to the individuals. We sell campaigns and ideas around the stories and profiles rather than the people.
How have you seen budgets develop since you've been at Twitter on both the allocation of spend from the media spend and the budget that creators are wanting?
It's really interesting. I think the good news is that there's lots more money in this market. So if you are starting out, if you even if you're really at the very early stages, a couple of thousand followers and you really feel that you can do something here, stick at it because it's getting bigger. Marketeers are spending much more money on it. They're taking money away from different areas like TV and outdoor and putting it here because it's so effective. The other flip side to that is there's more choice. And also the other flip side is people expect a lot more. So whereas brands potentially were dipping their toe in the water 2 or 3 years ago, now they know exactly what they want. They know exactly how much they want to spend and they're quite savvy around it. I think sometimes brands in that space can almost get too confident and they start working continually with the same people. But then what happens with the creators is they want to diversify. They don't want to continually be stuck making the same type of content. They want to move and evolve and they want to keep up with trends. So there is always this kind of middle ground where niche sits, which is trying to keep both parties really happy, keep the content measured, don't get too bogged down in the data. It's really much more about telling the right story.
What are the metrics that brands are interested in getting from you post-campaign? What are the things that you deliver back?
Great question. Reporting has become something that, is really important to brands right now. They don't just want to see, oh, this is great content and everyone loved it. They're like, okay, what were people saying? What were the captions? Did I own the space in that stage? When we worked with Amazon, their key metric for success was they wanted to be the most tweeted about show of Christmas. And we achieved that for them. So those kind of metrics can be quite arbitrary for the brand, but mostly they want to dominate the space for a certain period of time potentially. Or for them, it could be sentiment. It could be the fact that someone sees their brand as boring, as they've done a survey and they said, oh, look, everyone thinks we're boring. We really need to change that. So that's more sentiment. Other ones can be quite hard on it. They simply want reach and views, and that's really done mostly around video.
Have you found that brands have developed their thought processes around the type of marketing and are giving creators more control with their content?
You mentioned before about America, and I think, the UK's got some fantastic talent and some brilliant brands doing really innovative things. But if you look at someone like Wendy's, I mean, we don't even have Wendy's here, but if you just follow the Twitter handle, you can see some of the really cool things they do, and they're from the comedy and the tone of voice, and they've had so much fun with it, and they've really let creators run free with it, and that's where they're seeing their results. I think when you're as strong as Wendy's, that you know your own brand identity, you can be a lot more confident. I think when you're slightly less sure of who you are, what you stand for, where your position is, you might feel a little bit less confident. But the results are always, the more freedom a brand gives creators, the better the content.
What is the best campaign that you've worked on with a creator and why?
Oh, that's a really tough question. I think I've loved working with EE. EE have been brilliant. I've worked with them. I actually personally don't work normally on campaigns. I just work on the creator placement. But for some reason, I've managed to get myself on each EE campaign. And I think it's because the ideas have been so bold. We've worked with a real range of different people, from more TV established talent right the way through to up and coming. I think what I love about working with them is that they always want to take a new idea. They love a challenge. They like to kind of test technology as well, which is always fun, and creators really enjoy that. We worked on the EE BAFTA award, and it was the first time they'd ever done a shop the look on the catwalk. They wanted to have a more established fashion kind of guru walk the catwalk, but actually their audience was your everyday woman at home that wanted a cheaper version of a dress. So I had to kind of talk to them and say, you don't want really cool fashionistas watching this. This is for everyday people who want to have a cheaper version of clothes. You probably want somebody who does something like that. And the results were brilliant. They couldn't believe it. I remember that the clicks through, they didn't actually expect clicks through because it was more a brand awareness piece, but the clicks through were tripled what they originally thought they'd get.
Do you see a difference between social media celebrity and reality TV celebrity?
Absolutely there is, but as with everything, every wall needs to be broken, right? So you have your special ones that cross over. But I think for me, the difference is that, let's say someone comes out of Love Island and they've got a huge amount of popularity. Well, popularity doesn't mean creation of content. It just means for that moment in time you're popular. And if you want to ride it and work on a few different brand campaigns, then absolutely you should. But for us, we always work with content creators, and there are certain people, Gemma Collins, Terry would say, but she's now entered a whole new beast of celebrity. But there are always going to be grey areas. So I definitely don't put people into boxes, but I do see a very big difference between fame and creation of content.
Have you been stung with impolite people before?
I'm really lucky, actually. I think most people that I've worked with... You can
tell the truth, Joanne. You don't have to mention names, but what's the worst experience that you've had?
I think the worst experience I've had is when, let's say, creators who are untrained in acting want to be actors and they want to try it out while you're paying for it on a campaign. And that doesn't work very well because it's quite stressful. And unless you are a trained actor, it's really hard to suddenly start being scripted. So if you've gone from being a personality-led vlogger and you try to do something scripted and it just doesn't work, it's fine for you to do that in your own time, but when you have money paying behind it from a campaign and you have pressure around deadlines, it can get pretty stressful.
Do you find when the revenue is splitting across the social media that when you're pitching a YouTube video that costs more than doing an Instagram post, or are the budgets, would you say, similar throughout?
Okay, so I think mostly the reason that we don't do YouTube as well is that brands come to us specifically for short form. Niche has got into a really nice zone with short form content that scales. So rather than a destination YouTube video, from a creator's perspective, the kind of feedback we get is that they don't particularly want to do branded sponsored content on YouTube, that YouTube is very much for their audience. They're happier to monetize Twitter and monetize Instagram, whereas with YouTube, unless it's maybe sponsored through a product review or something that feels very authentic, but a one-off YouTube video that's brand sponsored outside of what they normally do can feel like a bit of a jolt.
What are we talked about this a bit earlier in terms of when it was kind of your competitors and that you don't really see that you have that many because you're in such a unique position. But with all of the third-party platforms connecting brands and influencers together, what are your views on that current situation?
It's really interesting. I spent a lot of time in Germany at the moment working actually with Marcus and his agent and talking about the growth of Germany, and they've seen a real boom in the marketplace offering. I think we're catching up with that. I think there's a few more coming up, and my feeling is that I think if you're starting out, let's say you are an Instagrammer and you do just want to start paying a few more bills, there's absolutely nothing wrong with getting involved in it. But I think as a brand and as a more developed influencer creator, I would really shy away from platforms that put a monetary mark on your head. I think it's up to you as a creator to decide how much you want to be charged for a piece of work. And it could be down to how much effort you have to put into it. You may need to put extra production. You may need to hire a videographer, a sound person, lighting. All these things kind of add up to make your content very good. And if you are going out there saying, oh, I'm always £100 a photo, this is going to completely ruin your career progression. So I think that there's everyone needs to start somewhere, right? Everyone needs to get their first break, their first brand. They need to start understanding the scope. So I think that it's a great place to start out. But for any developed campaigns and for any developed creators, it's not something I would recommend.
What do you think are the biggest problems that we are facing as an industry as a whole?
Ooh, that's a really big question, Alice. Oh, God, what are the biggest challenges coming up? I think crowded space. I think everybody kind of feels now that all they see maybe is influencer brand posts, and it's getting very noisy and crowded on the space. And how can we diversify? How can the content continue to be interesting? Don't keep seeing the same posts all the time. On that point, I think we're always going to be up against the technology platforms and how they operate their businesses. Algorithm changes affect everybody in a really real way. Likes are a currency. And if people take away those currency, you can lose revenue, opportunities. So I think it's always quite scary that every single one of us is operating on somebody else's property as such. So that's quite a worrying thing to think about if you get too deep into it.
If we're looking to the rest of the world as a sort of shining light on what the future holds, I know you've mentioned Germany before, but where would you say is the best place to look to see what we should expect?
Interesting. I mean, the US, I think, is we always look to the US for entertainment. It's so established there, their production. I think China's really interesting. Spent some time in Beijing and got to know how they actually create content and what they do. And it's so fast-paced over there. I think they have a way of just getting on with it. I think a lot of people agonise over, editing for hours and making things polished. And absolutely, there's a place for high quality content. It's beautiful to watch. But there's also a place for getting on with something and just getting it out there and having some fun. And I don't want us to get to a point where everybody now is tweeting about, I'm sorry I've not done this, it's edited so long, and I'm sorry it's not this. And I think people should just let their guard down slightly and go back to just shooting content a little bit less pruned and preened and just a little more of themselves. And I think people in China do that very much. They talk a lot more, they do a lot more live broadcasting. They kind of put their heart out there rather than continually agonising about whether this is, magazine quality work.
I wanted to talk to you also about payment terms, because I've seen this actually going across Twitter quite a lot with lots of bloggers and vloggers and Instagrammers and influencers struggling with platforms on being paid on time. Like, what are your payment terms?
So we have very good payment terms. We pay 15 days after your final post. So let's say that you're on a 3-month campaign and your final post is at the end of the month, the 28th of the month, you'll be paid 15 days after that, 15 working days. Sometimes I have to be really clear with people because they think it's 15 days from when they started the campaign. That would be mid-through, but it's 15 days from your final post, 15 working days. So we started out with that because we wanted to be creator first. We understood that people need to pay money, that this is a very fast-paced industry. We're not agencies. You can't have 90, 60-day terms with people.
How do you think that the next 5 years are going to shape out?
I really hope I get rich.
No. On a personal perspective and the industry as a whole.
So industry as a whole, what do I think things are going to happen in the next 5 years?
But also, just think about that, because first of all, we know that we're in a market now where we are saturated with creators and how many people are joining. But the influencer industry within the UK, the decision makers, that's not actually that big.
No, it isn't. And also to be honest with you, the creator world in the UK is actually quite small. When I go over to the US or China or Germany, and I'm really blown away by how many more people there are in their markets. We're actually a very small market, and you do see some of the same faces over and over again, which is quite a good thing because it builds community.
That's on the industry side.
On the industry side, you can see, the same people, the same faces talking about the same things. So where do I think it's kind of going in the next 5 years? I do feel like the people that are making decisions in PR and marketing need to keep up a bit quicker.
Yeah.
I think they should be held accountable to the success of what's happening. I don't think they can sit on the sidelines anymore and just think, this is something that happens outside of a campaign. I think they need to kind of get to grips with the fact that these are real people and value them.
The industry in 5 years' time now. Or even in the next year.
Because 5 years for me, I think
everything changes so fast.
Goodness, since I started in 2015 at Twitter, things have changed rapidly, and product updates have happened across all the different platforms. Things, at the time, Snapchat was absolutely reigning high in 2015, and now, as I said, I haven't worked on a Snapchat campaign for over a year. I think where things will go, I'm hopeful that Twitter will be a place that people continue to use to communicate. I love it for that reason. I love to talk to people. I like to have quick, witty comments back and forth with people. It makes me smile, and I hope that continues to go on. I think that Twitter will be a place to distribute content more effectively. There's lots of different tools that the guys are working on in product, so that's quite exciting. I think that we'll see more from Facebook. I think they're going to do a lot more around their watch. I think they're trying to become a destination for television, almost entertainment, which could be interesting.
They've launched dating as well.
Oh, I didn't know that, have they? Oh, my goodness. Oh, God. Can you imagine anyone that recommends you to go on a date with someone? No, well, thank you. Thumbs down for that one.
They've got enough data.
Very true, very true. So that'll be very interesting.
Let's talk about data, actually. I know that at the very beginning you were talking about that you have kind of access to the API, so you don't see all the passwords and everything, but with Cambridge Analytica and Facebook earlier this year, I mean, there are display ads everywhere from Facebook saying, fake accounts are not our friends. And
they've must have put a fortune into that. I've seen it everywhere, outdoor media, magazines.
Do you think the damage has been done, though?
It's a hard one. I have a love-hate relationship with Facebook. It's a place where everything kind of began for me, really. As I mentioned, working on social media, it was always about Facebook pages. Facebook for me was always the place that was the holy grail of social media. But now I do feel like it's quite a dated place.
Also, in terms of kind of profitability, there have been a couple of bad quarters in the big players, but do you think that affects influencers?
It'd be interesting to see what happens. I'm quite open-minded. I've talked to a few people about where they see Facebook in the world of creating content, and I think in the UK, potentially different in the US because they roll things out quicker over there. But in the UK, they've taken such a long time to roll out Watch. They've been taking away people's views on pages while they scale up Watch. But while they've been doing that, they've not been giving Watch to people in the UK. So I think there's a little bit of disparity between that. But
what is Watch?
I think Facebook Watch is their new destination for premium content. So creators will be putting out really like Netflix, really.
Or YouTube Red?
Yeah, a bit like YouTube Red, Netflix. But you put out your shows, and I think if you subscribe, there's certain different fees you can pay. You can see different content, and they're really dialing down pages, and they're going to start moving Watch. But I think in the interim of doing that, they've been dialing down pages, and people that have been very successful before on Facebook have seen a huge decline in their pages. And, what might seem like a short period of time to a company, let's say 2-3 months, is actually quite a long time to a creator. So watching your pages and your engagements decrease so dramatically while they tinker around can be really disencouraging.
Yeah, even as a business, we have a business page, we don't bother with it because it just feels like it's just not being seen by anyone. So what's the point?
Unless you're prepared as a brand to spend a fortune on Facebook, there's no point.
Well, thank you very much for coming in. Was there something that you feel that you wanted to talk about on here that we haven't covered so far?
Alice, you're an incredibly good interviewer. I feel like I've been...
keep that in.
Thoroughly grilled.
Well, that's the point of serious influence. It's not all this sort of, light, vanilla. I think so many podcasts can be so, just really chatty, and I actually want to ask questions. So that's
you're a journalist.
Well, this is what the aim is supposed to be, because I think sometimes you can be just. Yeah, but I hope I wasn't grilling you too hard.
No, it's very enjoyable actually to have a conversation. I think some of the challenges I have is that not that many people how can I say this without being insulting?
Get it.
Okay. I really wish there were more smart people that worked in my industry, because I'd like to have deeper, more developed conversations with people about this. But
that's what I really want Blogosphere to be able to help to do, though, because I think we've managed to improve the conversation around influencers, and when people read a Blogosphere interview, they're like, oh, okay, I get it. I get that they're working really hard, but I think on the industry side we need to be showing, because so many brands don't still understand, and just to really mature that conversation and between, because influencers and the brand side as well.
I think the opportunity for brands as well is huge. I mean, if you do look at, I mentioned before, but Wendy's or EE or people that are doing it, Red Bull, people that do it really well, think how well they're doing. I mean, their brand awareness is really high. They've got great sentiment, and people love them. And as a brand, to have love is, it's that intangible thing that's so hard to get, and you get it by working with people.
That's really good. We need to definitely keep that bit in. I thought we'd kind of finish, but that's so true. So actually, interviewing someone on the podcast recently, and they did a campaign with Wendy's.
Yeah, it's just so much fun to watch.
They really get it, and I think that it has to be. I was at Cannes Lion in June, and a lot of stuff. It was the first year that they were really kind of talking about influencers, and Keith Weed obviously came out and said that we need to clean up the ecosystem, otherwise trust is going to be lost forever. But a lot of it was that brands need to be authentic and genuine to their message, and then you can grow. Because I think when people are like, oh look, diversity's like good, I'll try and like cherry pick a bit of that.
Anything inauthentic sucks, right? So anything where anyone's just ticking a box, any brand that suddenly enters the music space without any history in music, or any brand that suddenly wants to just be working with influencers, when it comes so out of the blue and it's such a knee-jerk reaction, and consumers aren't stupid and creators aren't stupid. We're all smart enough to see something that's phony.
And I feel like mainstream magazines did that with plonking influencers on the cover, and then be like, oh great, I've got a huge spike in sales, but the interview is still written by somebody that is really bitter that they have to interview an influencer.
Yeah, so resentful. And I think that also comes from the fact that, I think if we really elephant in the room, right? Everyone that works at these brands, everyone that works in magazines, have all gone to university. They've all got up to their eyeballs in debt. They're probably struggling to afford London rent, as we all are. And then along comes these people who've probably not gone to university. They probably either left, and there's this natural resentment towards them because they're jealous. They are jealous of them because they had the balls to continue on doing something that they're passionate about, and they didn't just go down the path of, the usual path of internship, grad scheme, got themselves into debt, and they just did it their own way. And I think anyone that presents that to somebody who has gone through the mainstream path will be naturally resentful. And if they could admit that and just say, God, I wish I'd done what you'd done. But the problem is, what they don't realise is that, these creators have sacrificed so much to do it. Nothing ever comes easy. So I think that that's the elephant in the room, really, is that the people from these established places are resentful and jealous because they wish they'd had the balls to do it themselves.
And then you'll get some journalists that are like, I'm going to quit my job and I'll just become an influencer. And then it's a year down and they can't do it.
Exactly. And the thing is, they don't want to commit to the workload or the sacrifices. Like I said, I'm not prepared to sacrifice my personal life to invest in creating content, because that's what you have to do. You have to completely sacrifice your personal life. And for somebody who likes to keep things quite personal, it's not a good option for me.
A big thank you to Jo for coming on the show. You've been listening to Blogosphere Serious Influence with me, Alice Audley. Join us next week for a brand new episode. Until then, be sure to check out blogospheremagazine.com for influencer industry updates. And why not treat yourself to a magazine subscription whilst you're there?